The show is supremely done in technical respect. It's very rewarding to watch, but it has very flat characters with no development whatsoever. Ripley included, right? But maybe, I don't know, maybe it was supposed to be this way. Maybe, again, noir films, they don't have character development, right? It's just a bunch of shit. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert D. Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. So, yesterday I finished watching Ripley, which is a TV series, based on a novel from 1955, Talented Mr. Ripley. You've probably heard about the adaptation from 1999 with Matt Damon. However, I haven't read the book, and neither have I watched the film with Damon. So I can only judge by what I've watched just now, which is, again, Ripley from 2024. And this is what I want to talk about, because I think, spoiler alert, this is a really great TV series, even though it's lacking in some important respects, which we're gonna discuss in this video, okay? So, obviously there will be spoilers, and obviously, just as I've said many times before, spoilers do not actually spoil anything. Again, the novel is already like 70 years old or something, right? So, do you even care, you know? I would still recommend you to watch it. It's like 7 hours long, right? This video hopefully won't be 7 hours long. I'm kind of looking at the watch. We'll see. Anyways. So, I will spoil, some things at the very least, okay? So, yeah. The brief characteristic of this show, in my opinion, would be that it's very immersive, it's quite slow, it's very emotional, but in a thriller type of way, if you know what I mean, and it's very crisp and to the point, actually. Like, it's filled with a lot of details. Like, it's in black and white, which again makes it slightly original. So it gives off right away some serious noir vibes, you know. But overall, in terms of like palette, if you can call it that, it's pretty bright. So compared to, you know, your typical noir film, this one is actually much brighter. Though I have to say, it's again brighter in terms of visuals. But there are, in terms of emotions, there are very realistic murder scenes. So beware. Like, in episode 5, actually, like, I thought at some point, like, you know, I'm sorry, this is too much for me. Like, I just don't want to be there. I don't want to watch this. Because, this isn't some, you know, John Wick, thing where people die in thousands and, you know, nobody cares. It's fine. They're all expendable anyway. There's no consequence. And this isn't, at the same time, this isn't some horror film where just the level of fantasy is so absurd that, again, you don't care how much gore you observe, right? But this, Ripley, is actually scary, like, without any jokes, because it feels real, alright? So, this is basically my warning to you. Like, there are some really tense things. Like, in episode 5, again, I just sat for like 35 minutes holding my breath, because it kept this steady, intense sense of terror, right? Which reminded me again of Twin Peaks, season 3, episode 8, the same kind of vibes, like it's really scary, even though you might argue that Twin Peaks is fantasy, right? But this is not. This is, I would call it something like post-noir, you know? Like, it is noir, but at the same time, it's overly realistic. It's like right in your face realistic, and thus it is very horrifying. But sometimes, like, most episodes aren't like this at all, okay? Even like half of episode 5 is not like that at all. Yeah. One interesting characteristic as well is that it has very little dialogue, okay? But it is so finely detailed that you can understand everything pretty much without words. Alright? And it almost gives off this almost silent film type of vibes, which reminds me of one video, like a short video essay that I've watched where George Lucas, of all people, have been saying that, I mean, the author of the video kind of quoted him, that Lucas intended Star Wars to be almost like a silent film, which kind of gives you a completely different perspective, I believe. But this is very similar in this respect, even though obviously without all the epicness, without all the grandeur of the Star Wars, alright? almost like a silent film again. Like, we have this episode where, literally episode 1 actually, Ripley dreams about filthy water, like filling the, whatever, bathroom. And then we have him standing on the beach in the same episode, and you realize just from his body language that he cannot swim. And no one ever said that. There was no, like, foreshadowing of this, you know, but it became, like, perfectly clear in 10 seconds of screen time, you know, and it's this principle of show, don't tell, you know. So this TV series actually respects the viewer enough that they can connect the dots, you know. You just have to pay attention, you know, and it's very rewarding to watch in this sense, to pay attention to these details. But I have to say, it feels a bit empty because of this, okay? Maybe not because of this specifically, but it also feels a bit empty because it is a show, it is a series, not about characters, but about how they act, if you wish. We'll talk about this quite a bit more when I'm gonna go towards my criticism, okay? Overall, the emotional sort of background of this series, if you wish, is dread, uneasiness, and unhappiness, okay? Like, there is almost like something is hanging from the top, like some sticky, ugly atmosphere is there, always, like, pretty much. There is this paranoia feeling, you know, like, and they like keep you kind of checked in this respect. Like, every 10 minutes or so, they would show you some little detail, they would prick you a little bit, you know, with some paranoid thing, like somebody noticed something unusual about Ripley or something, like something sinister might happen, like, very soon, you know? Yeah. And in New York, like, where the show starts, like, it's everywhere, this paranoia, right? But when he arrives to Italy, there is this also added feeling of alienation, which kind of adds on to the paranoia, you know, everybody looks at you with, not you, Ripley, you know, with sort of suspicion at the very least, you know, you're a foreigner, you're in another country, and it only is reinforced, this alienation that I just spoke about, when he meets the Richard guy, who he eventually kills, spoiler alert. And again, Atrani, this city, this town actually, where they live, is actually the second smallest town in Italy, okay? So it's basically like everybody knows everyone. So this alienation, this paranoia is only reinforced for this foreigner, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's slowly transition into the things I really didn't like, and most of all, it all revolves around the character of Ripley, right? Well, first of all, the title, Talented, I can only assume it was an irony of some sorts. Again, I have no background information. I've never read the novel. I don't know anything about the novel. I've never read the adaptation with Matt Damon. I'm only taking Ripley, the TV series, as it is, like with nothing else, okay? So I can only assume that the title Talented is ironic, because if you look at the guy, he's not really talented in anything, really. He doesn't know anything about art or geography or like any of those sort of general sort of kind of knowledge, you know, erudition, you might say. He lacks social skills, you know, like he can't small talk at all. In fact, he's actually annoyingly embarrassing in most of the scenes, like 95% of the scenes where he talks to anyone, he is annoyingly embarrassing, right? So basically, it's not the catch me if you can type of guy, right? Who's like the jolly kind of type. This guy is completely different. He's like, I don't know, inept, is how I would describe him. Again, he doesn't know anything about women. It seems so, right? They just seem kind of see him through, you know? And like you can tell how Marge, this girl, actually kind of judgingly stares at him the whole series, you know, like she almost like she knows what he's about, you know. He's this no vibes guy, the creep, you know, the proverbial. Even though Marge herself, as we are shown later in the series, is not very smart, let's put it this way. She's like a regular gold digger / clout chaser, let's put it this way, okay? The same goes with the maid. You know, the maid, Ermandil, I don't remember her name. So she's actually kind of the smartest character probably in the whole series, which is kind of ironic, right? Or at least in the whole house, in Atrani. I guess being the only non-American there helps, wink wink, you know? But anyway, actually, like, this trope, I believe, they may have taken from Italian comedies, you know, from like Italian opera, like opera buffa or whatever, where, like again, the maid, the servant is usually the smartest character, specifically the female maid, okay? But this is definitely the case with this girl, and she definitely knows what this Ripley character is about. And it looks like, again, returning to Ripley himself, and his inaptitude, if that's the word. Is that a word? I don't know. I'm also not very talented, you see. So the robe that he chose for the guy, you remember what the guy says? Like, whoever picks this, like, I'm sure it's my mom that picked this. It's awful. And you can see Ripley kind of dying inside when he says that, because it was Ripley who chose this robe, right? Like, he has no taste at all. Again, like, he doesn't know anything, really. He has no clue about paintings. Like, when Richard talks to him about paintings, it's just kind of, oh yeah, really? Ah. And he's just like nodding. And like there is a specific scene where, like he looks in the corner, there's these abstract paintings, and Richard says, oh, this was my abstract period, you know, like very pompously. And the guy says, okay, I see. Then Ripley comes, and there's a section with like blue paintings, and he says, oh, this must be your blue period then. And Richard laughs and says, well, I never thought about it like that. And you can realize that Ripley said this just because he had this sort of blueprint just now, right? Blank period, right? Abstract period. Now I say this blue period. He has no idea that Picasso had a blue period, right? Which Richard knew, because he has a Picasso painting in his house, right? Actually, probably the most expensive one, piece of anything he had. Okay, so yeah. But anyway, the director is thus kind of showing us that these guys are both idiots, right? Both this pompous Richard guy and absolutely, you can actually say stupid Ripley, okay? Like supremely untalented to change his own words from episode 8. Anyway, so let's talk about my criticism of the character some more. And like, for now on, I was just kind of describing the character, but now I want to emphasize how bad it is for the kind of piece we're presented, let's put it this way, for the kind of plot we're observing here. So what makes this plot not very believable, I would say, is the lack of emotional depth. Like a complete, that's my biggest probably problem with this show in the first place. Like, who is this guy? I mean, your show is literally called Ripley. Can you tell me more about Ripley? But instead, it's more like things that happen to Ripley is what we observe, right? We still don't know who the guy is, like what is he about? And I'll try to clarify this in a few moments, right? I've had the same problem with Oppenheimer, you know, the Christopher Nolan movie. I even wanted to make a video, and maybe I will sometime later, but not guaranteed. But I had the same problem. Like you literally name your movie Oppenheimer, but I remember my own feeling getting out of the cinema. I'm standing on the street and I'm like, who is Oppenheimer? Like, I just spent 3 hours watching a movie specifically about him, and I have no idea who he is. Like, how is this possible? What did I just watch? And I have the same problem with Ripley, right? Like, we're just following him. We look at what he does, and it reveals nothing about him, essentially. I've had actually the very same problem with the Joker movie. It's very similar to Ripley. Like, Joker movie is very similar to Ripley, the series, okay? So, yeah. So let's try to figure a little bit out about him from what he does at the very least, okay? So when he impersonates other people, he always praises himself. Like, for example, he writes a letter to Richard's family pretending that he is Richard, the author of the letter, even though it's Ripley who's writing the letter. And he says, oh, by the way, this guy, Tom Ripley, he's absolutely amazing. He's the best guy there is. I love him so much. Cool. Right? So he does this many times throughout the series. Like he praises himself in the third person, so to speak, right? So that gives us an idea that he's probably vain, right? So he has this sin of pride. We'll actually probably utilize the language of sins to describe his personality, which is fitting since it's a noir film with murder and, theft and things like that. So pride, noted, okay. Then he has envy, definitely, because again, once he arrives to Italy, he looks at how Richard lives, and he's absolutely astonished. He probably thinks, God damn, I want to live like that as well. And like the show actually shows us, forgive me for this tautology, like how envious he is of the ring the guy has, of the pen the guy has, of the money he has, of the girl he has, even though again, with the girls, like it's actually indicated sort of that he is queer, aka gay, but I don't know, like it's just kind of weird. There is only one episode where some sort of near, let's say, can I even say this word on YouTube? Intercourse type of topic is brought up, is when he arrives to Rome and he looks at the beautiful girls, like going on dates and things like that. But it's like very in passing. It's like maybe 15 seconds or something. Like nothing at all of this sort surfaces up, even though the hostess, is that the word in English? I don't know. The woman he's renting his apartment from in Rome, by the way, she kind of implies that she is single to him and kind of low-key is flirting with him. Like he says, Senora, and she says, Senorita, so yeah. But he never, responds anything to this. I'm saying all this to exclude lust. I don't think lust is on the list of our priorities anywhere here. Like again, Marge gets drunk. Like even though you might say he wanted her, but he only wanted her because the other guy had her. Once the other guy died, and she was free, he no longer wanted her. So it's not lust, it's envy, okay? So pride, noted. Envy, noted. Okay? These are his main motivations, I would say. But, of course, greed as well. Okay? So he is poor at the very beginning, and he wants to be rich. I mean, understandable. So these three sins, if you wish, pride, envy, and greed, are his main motivational traits. Let's put it this way. Okay? Yeah. And prudence is his only virtue, if you know what I mean. Like, he can fake documents, so he's probably very careful. Like, you can see he spends like quite a bit of time trying to learn how to fake the signature, etc., etc. Like, but even this, he doesn't really do that well, returning to the talented part, because again, the two scenes in the banks, where he's so afraid that he would be, they would notice that something is wrong. Actually, in episode 1, they do notice, so he has to kind of run from there. And in the next scene, he notices that the photo he glued to his passport is kind of coming off. So again, he has to run away. So he's not that good even in this, okay? Like when he was gluing this photo, I was like, what are you doing? Like there's another photo underneath it, like it would be visible. Like I would assume he would somehow remove the first photo first, but I don't know. I'm not a specialist in forgery, okay? But it looked weird again. So he's not even good at what he's doing, which was the reason he signed up for the job to begin with, right? If he was successful as a con man, as a scammer in New York, he wouldn't go to Italy to meet with Richard and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And then again, remember this, even as a scammer, he's a very kind of a low level guy, because remember this episode with the mafia guy when he proposed to bring the suitcase for a crap ton of money. And only Richard said, like, do you know who this guy is? He's the mafia, you know? And he's like, really? Like, so what? Yeah. So he kind of, Ripley, I mean, he only recognizes small level scams, like this one with taxi and damsel in distress. But to be fair, this scam was so obvious that even I recognized it, okay? Like right away. Like, why would there be a taxi cab waiting near this woman? Like, it would just go away, right? If she doesn't have any money. Anyway, though, again, some prudence allows Ripley to learn pretty quickly. At least he has some talent. We have to acknowledge this. Like in episode 3, and onwards, like he's actually speaking Italian rather well. So this is at least one thing, which, is there for him. And he is supposedly, again, we're only being given hints on this, good at writing and editing. Again, if we look at the letters, he was kind of overly pompous in his letters, but in terms of like, he edited Marge's book, right? At least apparently. I mean, he did, but we don't know how good it was because we don't see the text, right? It's only shown in passing. And it's unclear actually whether Marge is happy or sad about them, which again would anyway give us no information about him, Ripley, his skill as an editor anyway, because we don't know of her skill as a writer, etc. Like, we have a suspicion she's not a very good writer, let's put it this way, alright? Otherwise, she'd probably had many more books already, and she has none, alright? So, yeah. Anyway. And also, what we are being shown is that Ripley actually paints decently well. Like, not good, not genius, but, you know, decent, okay? In episode 4, if you're interested. And he also is good in at least imitating accents, right? Imitating voices, impersonating people in this sense, in the vocal sense, you might put it this way, even though he gets recognized a few times anyway, over the phone even. So you might say he's not very good at this even, okay? Yeah, so this is my kind of a problem. Actually, this is more like an interlude to my biggest problem, is that he is quite incapable, but he kind of has plot armor, you know? Like, it's like he's a Gary Stu, you know? Everybody complains about Mary Sue, but here we have a Gary Stu, except not quite. He's more likely like anti-Gary Stu. Because who is a Gary Stu? It's a character that has like fantastic abilities with no foreshadowing. He can just do anything, right? This guy, however, Ripley, has very little abilities and yet succeeds despite not having these abilities, right? This is kind of, I don't know what kind of trope this is. It's not quite Gary Stu, but hopefully you know what I mean. Again, anti-Gary Stu, I guess. Let's call it that. So yeah, he does some things well, but is generally inept, which does not look believable considering his actual success, right? It's almost like, again, the plot is kind of moving him forward, despite his efforts to sabotage it, okay? Something like this. Like, just think about this. This was pissing me off to no end. Like, he kills a guy, okay? And he lives using his name in the middle of Rome. Like, just think about this. Think about the depths, the mental depths that we have here. Like, he's a retard, you know? Like, so, because he is a retard, because he does this stupid shit, he has to kill another guy, okay? And even after that, when police questions him and then leaves him alone, he still stays put and never leaves the country or something. He lives in the same spot under the name of the guy he killed, despite the investigation about the another guy he killed. Like, he's a double retard. I'm sorry, like, talented is the retardest, you know, at this point. Like, by the end of episode 6, you actually realize that the guy really is an idiot. Like, there's no other word to describe this. By that time, he should have fled the country like 100 times already. But he didn't, right? Somehow he's not afraid. So yeah. And here we're coming into the problem. I don't have these segments very structurized, but when I was watching the first episodes, I hoped there would be some, let's call it retribution, you know? Like, think about Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, right? Something like this. But there wasn't, spoiler alert, actually. Ripley won, again, in anti-Gary Stu style. He just kind of skated through all the obstacles, despite his own ineptitude. Is that a word? I don't know. Anyway, and I was kind of thinking, what kind of a moral of the story can the authors give us, given this sort of character, who's absolutely greedy, envious, and what was the third thing? Prideful, right? There must have been some repentance coming, right? The show, I was naively thinking, would show us, pun intended, that lies can lead you into very dark places, you know? Lie alienates you, again, returning to my description of the show itself as showing this alienation stuff. Because if you lie, you remain the only one who bears the truth. So the thing about the truth is that it is barely bearable, even by the collective effort of humanity. But if you conceal it, you remain alone to carry it, thus making it completely unbearable. And I thought, well, maybe they will use this metaphor of these stairs. Remember that the stairs he climbs in Atrani to reach Richard? It's like this burden of truth, you know? Anyway. So I thought that's gonna be the moral of the story. That when you lie, it's not the lie that kills you. The lie, the sweet lie, is what the other people get. What kills you is what remains with you. That is the truth. You remain one-on-one with the truth, which is unbearable. Okay? So yeah, you remember what Nietzsche said, that the magnitude of a person is determined by the amount of truth they can bear. And this Ripley guy, he couldn't bear a whole lot, you know? At least it would be unbelievable if he could. Like, he was a small man, you might say petty man, right? So again, we are only left with a very flat picture. Like, it's not very believable. Like, how could he do all those things and not collapse under their weight, basically? That's kind of my problem, you know, with this character. Like, yes, you can be motivated by greed and envy and pride, and he is, like, he fights for every penny and is literally risking imprisonment at every step. I just don't find this believable while being so petty and not being a coward. Like, how is this possible? You know? You can't be that stoic as he is factually without some solid foundation. He would have broken down, I think, many times. But we are not shown this. We are shown that he's kind of okay, you know? Alright. That's my main problem with the character itself. But I'm gonna mention this again. This segment is poorly structured, so we'll mention this again sometime later. Now I want to talk about this, some subplots, some random thoughts, assorted images, so to speak, right? So at the moment, there is some sort of hint, you know, this sort of quasi-moralistic, quasi-religious theme, you might call it, is with Caravaggio, right? So when he first saw it, the painting, he was actually struck, like, you could tell, like, it actually moved him a lot. So yeah, you could tell that he had never seen anything like that. And then they sit at this cafe and the woman sings this song, I don't know the title, which he later buys actually. Not the cafe, the song, you know, the record. And he's struck again, you know, he's crying literally. So it kind of moved him. So there must be, you know, something in him, I guess, that resonated. So he's not like absolutely petty, like he can understand those things, but we are left without it, you know. There are only these minute tidbits, you know. Like, it's almost like, let me try to concoct, it's a complete improvisation right now, but what if he's some sort of a war veteran? I know he's too young for this, but let's just assume. Maybe Korean War, okay? It's actually, the show takes place in 1961 or 1960. I don't know, maybe a Korean War veteran. And yeah, maybe then, you know, maybe he suppressed all the roughly speaking, good things in himself, and became vengeful or something towards the government, taxi driver style. But we don't see any vengefulness in him, right? It's all petty. Then it wouldn't add up anyway, right? What I meant is that would, if he was a war veteran, that would explain his stoicism, right? But we don't know anything about this, and it would fall apart. You just can't glue these pieces together, okay? Like, so I don't know. I don't know how to read this character. Yeah. So continuing the Caravaggio theme, obviously in episode 4 there is this mentioned, the David and Goliath painting, and it's kind of interwoven into the narration when he kills the other guy, where he actually kind of feels some compassion towards the guy, even a bit of remorse, and like he gets these hallucinations with people that he have killed, but again, he doesn't seem to be very concerned with them. He's not even scared. Sometimes he's even happy to see them, and to talk with them. To them. Like, again, it's very weird. Yeah. Again, speaking of assorted images and Caravaggio subplot, what if there are other religious motifs? So, again, when I was watching the first episodes, 1, 2, and 3, I thought that it looks like a Cain and Abel story a little bit, because the daddy, aka God, pays for both of them. So they're kind of beloved by him, a little bit at least. A lot, actually. They paid them a lot. They were just freeloading there on his money. But then he stops. Note that the daddy, the father of Richard, stops paying Ripley, right? So Ripley gets pissed off and kills Richard. Isn't that the Cain and Abel story, kind of, right? But the show is clearly not about this. It's just kind of like a small thing I've noted. And maybe the ring has other symbolism except for envy, but I don't know this, okay? And the pen, how many times everyone notes how cool of a pen he is, like literally every hotel, every place he shows up, everybody says, bella pena, or whatever it's said in Italian, And then there's an episode in Palermo when he leaves and he signs the checkout paper. I don't know what he signed actually. And he signs it with the pen from the stand, from the reception, right? And he carries the pen with him, and the receptionist calls him and says, "Give me the pen back, please," okay? So it's like this humiliation kind of, You used to have a great pen, even though it wasn't yours to begin with, right? You've stolen it from Richard, who you've killed, by the way. And now you're using the shitty pen, and you can't even take it away with you, right? So, yeah, it was a great symbol. And again, just pay attention to these details. Like, this series is for people who pay attention, and it rewards them a lot, alright? For every small tidbit like this. And it's filled with these things. So, again, speaking of the pen, there is this Gnostic narrative that the world is created by fake God, blah, 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 blah. It's all a bunch of BS, honestly. But if you think about the pen in this respect, pen is the instrument of logos, right? So the fake pen, stolen pen, is the logos of the false God. So maybe you can insert some sort of Gnostic narratives here. I don't know. But again, fake pen, fake logos, fake God, fake name, fake words, fake bank accounts, fake documents. It all kind of, there is something to it. Maybe there is a Gnostic reading of Ripley that I completely missed. Actually, I didn't, because I'm telling you about it right now, but I haven't looked into any other details. Alright? But the keys I've just gave you the keys if you wish. Anyway, again, since we're talking about Italy, obviously, they had to bring up this Renaissance spirit. Again, the Caravaggio kind of mirroring Ripley, or vice versa, actually, And in episode 8, he even grows beard / mustache, just like Caravaggio. Like, not really, but kinda. And then, he actually, like, it's a really stupid episode, at least this part of this episode, where he actually disguises himself, believe it or not, like buys a wig, a fake beard, etc., to talk to Inspector so that the Inspector wouldn't, recognize him. This was stupid, but apparently it worked. But then again, episode 8 is all about this sort of comedic, almost like a comedic relief from the previous 7 episodes, I would call it. Yeah. Well, yeah, there's just some little tidbits, but I'm afraid this video is already quite long, so I'm gonna probably skip them. Like, yeah, there's quite a lot we could have talked about. It's a great show. Like, regardless of all my criticism, I only criticize it because I care, It's this kind of thing. There's obvious undertone as well, speaking of Italy and America, the pretense of Americans. I mean, we've talked about this so much on this channel, let's reiterate that. This inferiority complex of Americans is demonstrated there, like, what is the cultural roots of the modern chatbot panic / AI panic? Well, it's the crutch for Americans. Americans think, probably justifiably, that they can't think themselves, therefore they need crutches to think, just like Europeans, right? So they create AI, actually fake chatbots again. So it's again, 3 Americans living in Italy, right? The son, the Richard, just Richard, is a pompous idiot, right? Typical American. Like, he has these shitty paintings, he's trying to imitate the Europeans, and he's just living off of his dad's money, right? Not doing anything useful, just living in Italy like a local aristocrat among the things that other people have built, Basically stealing. Probably a poke towards the boomer generation, Again, given that it's early 60s. So yeah, Ripley and him are very similar in this respect. Ripley is stealing, and is actually killing people on top of it. And this guy is stealing from his dad, basically, effectively, It's just that one guy thinks he has some flair, Richard thinks he's fancy, and Ripley doesn't. Actually, Ripley does think that he has some flair, and even more than Richard. Did I say Richard? Ripley thinks he has more than Richard, again, due to his hyperfixation on pride, right? Then this Richard guy, it all, by the way, ties back to this Cain and Abel story, right? They're like brothers almost. So Richard is also full of himself. Like, remember how he forgets the date with Marge? I think it was episode 1 or 2, right? And by the way, reiterating what I said about details, I emphasize, like, no character actually says it out loud, that there was a date and Richard forgot about it. It's just, you understand it from context if you listen to what they're saying, right? They never say that out loud, that there was supposed to be a date, but it's understood if you just try to follow the context. That's what I meant when I said immersive and rewarding and following the detail, right? It's the context, these small details. All is in the open. You just have to pay attention instead of, I don't know, scrolling your phone or going to the bathroom or doing something else. And then literally the next scene after this scene about the date, the failed date, I guess, you can see how Ripley is watching the guy, Richard, signing his documents, and he's like looking over his shoulder, over Richard's shoulder, and you immediately know what he's looking at. He's looking at Richard signing his documents with the right hand. Have you noticed at that point, I hope you did, that Ripley is left-handed actually, right? Like, you may have noticed this during the dinner with the father of Richard, the Mr. Greenleaf, right? He ate with his left hand, he held the fork in his left hand, and he was writing all these false checks with his left hand. You should have noticed this, alright? Yeah. So the show is very rich with this kind of detail, and I'm truly amazed in this respect. Like, it's really, really well written, episodically, in this respect. Like, everything has, proper foreshadowing, everything has, everything is connected, you know? Everything is great in this respect. Also, by the way, great visuals and superb acting. So, again, my verdict, I can barely speak already, is that the show is highly recommended and it is very rewarding. And some last, I guess, PS style notes that I have, that I'm currently reading, is that during this Venice party of the Count in episode 8, I think it was 8. Yeah, I think he arrived in Venice only in episode 8. The last one. I got the very heavy devil's advocate vibes, you know? Like, and it goes against what I just said about Europeans being cool and Americans being sort of uncool. It actually shows that Europeans, at least, you know, the regular people, actually not the regular people, but the people who attend these high-level parties are actually useless scum as well, you know. And the second party he attends, Ripley, is even worse in this respect. And actually, only Ripley himself is the voice of reason there, paradoxically. And again, contrary to whatever I just said here. There was a funny episode in Palermo where the receptionist of the small hotel he's staying in Palermo, I just kept looking at him and thought that's a familiar face. Where did I see this guy? And I thought, damn, he looks like a young John Malkovich. And lo and behold, in Venice, at this party, we see actual John Malkovich. Like, I rejoiced so much. I love the guy. Okay. And he's actually, like, so good in this series, even though he appears for, like, I don't know, 3 minutes on the screen. And he's actually also a scammer. And there's a funny scene where he, like, looks for the credit card, like, not the credit card. What's the expression? Well, business card, I guess. And you can see, like, he has different cities with like different numbers, and like it's clear that he's a scammer, even though they don't tell you this in the scene, right? You have to pay attention again, and they exchange the dialogue. Ripley and Malkovich's character, I don't remember his name, he's some French supposedly at least, and Ripley asks Malkovich, let's just call him that, what do you do? And he says, what do I do? I'm an art dealer, okay? And what do you do? And Ripley says, well, I'm an art dealer myself. And Malkovich says, oh, I could tell. And Ripley responds, yeah, I knew that you are an art dealer as well. You know, it's very funny, actually. Again, only if you pay attention. Yeah. Oh, there's also this funny Sicily stereotype, again, about Palermo, like the first hotel Ripley arrives at. It's this super talkative receptionist, which was also pretty funny. And the boy who is supposed to carry the luggage, he never appears in the first place, right? Yeah. I do have a bit of a problem in this respect, though, with all this foreshadowing, superb writing episodically, at least, again, disregarding what I just said, not just, maybe like 20 minutes ago, about the Ripley character overall, right? There is a problem still, even on this episodic level. In episode 3, we know Ripley cannot swim, but he swims. What the hell? That was really surprising to see, you know? Generally, this whole boat episode is I almost want to invent some conspiracy theory that it was a dream or something, you know? But it wasn't, clearly, because it ties heavily to everything else, right? Like, did he actually fake that he can't swim? So, my previous point that I made at the beginning is kind of false, you know? That we've been shown that he cannot swim, but he actually can't, like... What's with this boat episode? I have no idea. Like, you know, the stone hits him in the, how do you call it? Not the forehead, but the back of the head, let's call it this way, right? Then the boat hits him actually in the front. And there's no signs of damage whatsoever. Like, it looks like a dream, right? Like, it's so weird. The whole episode from start to finish. And again, very realistic murder scene, so beware. Yeah, so I am disappointed with the finale, you know. Again, I've expected some sort of, I don't know, retribution, punishment, some sort of arc, I would argue, must have been there with the Ripley character. And there is none, you know? Yeah. I am a poor guy, but I'm a greedy guy, and I'm also envious, and what else? Well, and I'm prideful, right? And then I kill some people and steal from some people, and I become a rich guy, and now I'm happy. This is not a character arc, I'm sorry. This does not allow you to call your series Ripley. You must call it, I don't know, something that, a few things that happened to Ripley, you know? Something like that. Again, we're returning to my main, not argument, but problem with this series, alright? Yeah, it's not an arc. Hopefully, I think I've fleshed out most of the positive and negative sides. Again, to quickly summarize what we just talked about, the show is supremely done in technical respect. It's very rewarding to watch, but it has very flat characters with no development whatsoever, Ripley included, right? But maybe, I don't know, maybe it was supposed to be this way. Maybe, again, noir films, they don't have character development, right? It's just a bunch of criminal shit that happens, and the way people are trying to out-greed and out-pride and out-lust and out-envy the other people, right? Something like this. So in this respect, it is a typical noir. No character development at all. But I guess I was so fascinated by episode 1 that I kind of wanted it. Like, I was kind of expecting it, right? I thought, God damn, like if it starts so good, imagine what we'll get in the middle. But we get the same things, you know, very flat characters. We're just following them around. But then again, all the positive sides still stand. So I would claim, this is my big claim, that Ripley is probably the best TV series of 2024. Okay? With an asterisk in fine print. And we read the asterisk and it says, Arcane Season 2 was actually better, but Arcane Season 2 is animated, and Ripley is live action. So, you know, in terms of live action, Ripley is the best TV series of 2024. If you don't, like, if at all, it would be Arcane Season 2. Okay. Yeah. That will probably be all. If I forget something, I'll put it in the description or pin it in the comments or something. Thank you for watching. The eons are closing. If you wish to support me, please consider joining my Patreon. That is patreon.com/philosopher. See the link in the description. Or if you have a scientific theory of your own and you'd like my help in developing it, please join my alternative science coaching program, also available through Patreon.